All righty. Well, in the interest of time, hello, my name is David McElnay. I'm going to get this April version of the Urban Design Panel underway. So hello and welcome. Folks are still coming into the meeting here, and Kathy will let them in as they arrive. So hello and welcome. As I said, my name is David McElnay, and I'm representing the Executive Committee of the Urban Design Panel. Today, in introducing our excellent panel presentation by our friends at TriMet. Fiona, remind me the title of your presentation today.
We are sharing our new regional TOD plan.
Excellent. The Urban Design Panel is sponsored jointly by the American Institute of Architects, the American Planning Association, and the American Society of Landscape Architects, and is composed of professionals from these three organizations with a shared interest in urban design. We are joined today by Heather Wilson, Executive Vice President at the AIA Oregon. The AIA has previously hosted this event at the Center for Architecture in Portland. That's getting a little dated now saying that, but now generously offers this monthly Zoom meeting until further notice. In addition to a monthly email announcement, our panel presentations can be found at the AIA Oregon event calendar, and as well as their weekly Thursdays at 3 newsletter that comes out via email. Participation in any event makes you a panel member. We encourage you to sign up for information about future presentations. When you register for any UDP presentation, you will be included in upcoming email invites. We also encourage you to send any interesting future panel presentations, please. We'd love to hear ideas to Kathy Wendland at AIA Oregon. Kathy, if you would put your email in the chat, that would be awesome. These presentations are recorded, and they're made available by the AIA as a Vimeo file, and that can be found in the link provided in the chat box also, which is an archive with AIA Oregon. This presentation will be about 30 minutes, maybe a little more, and be followed by Q&A as we usually do. So for the Q&A, please pose your questions and comments in the Zoom chat box. But also, we're trying to expand our format a little bit and say you are welcome to raise your hand and speak up, pose your question verbally, put out any points that you'd like to make. Our executive committee member, Erin Riom, is going to be effectively chaperoning that process. So she'll curate the questions out of the chat box and also call on folks that have input. And so follow-up questions can also be sent directly to today's presenters. I assume presenters that would be all right. And if that's good for you, please put your email in the chat box at some point for folks to resource. So with that, I'm going to turn over the meeting to our presenters, Fiona Lyon, Design Manager, and Guy Benn, Project Manager, for today's presentation. Take it away. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, David, for that introduction. And yeah, thanks for having me to the Urban Design Panel today. If you don't mind, I'm going to wear both hats. One in my TriMet role, and I also sit on the Urban Design Panel Executive Committee. And yeah, I'm going to have us welcome my colleague, Guy Benn, who's the program manager for our TOD program. And unfortunately, can't be with us today, but I want to give a shout out to our colleague, Miles Anderson, who is our planner, our in-house planner in the TOD program, who has poured a lot of work into this plan and really kind of our cornerstone on the team. So yeah, I think really today we're just hoping to help spread the word and share a little bit more of what we're calling our regional TOD plan. That's an effort that's been underway for a little while, and we've been trying to just find good audiences to make sure folks know how to get to it. And so give you a peek of what's inside. So yeah, just I think kicking off, what is TOD? I always like to kind of start us there because it is an acronym, and I never like to assume that everyone knows what TOD is. I think we often use these acronyms in community meetings and get called out for it. But yeah, TOD, I think really TriMet has just really tried to take a sharper lens on the land use around our existing transit throughout the region. Really making sure that we're creating these compact, walkable, pedestrian oriented, mixed use, mixed income communities. So really they're just kind of simple goal, really trying to put all of our frequent destinations and have a healthy balance of all these things at our transit. Oops. So kind of peeling away the layers and getting into our plan. This is a graphic that our consultants produced. We did have I want to give a shout out to our consultant team that worked with us on this regional plan effort. And they really tried to help us visualize, what does TOD look like, particularly in the Portland region? How do we help communicate the benefits of it kind of individually to the community, from our kind of environmental side, from an equity perspective, really trying to put all these things into one plan, one place. So I jokingly call this graphic TriMetville, TriMetville, Oregon. But yeah, really the benefits of our TOD plan, they really help support TriMet's broader sustainability and equity goals that are outlined in our business plan. Really, it's a huge way for us to be able to meet those goals, near term and long term. So really just trying to make progress there. And I think, we often think about TOD as like sites and vertical development. But I think one thing that we're always trying to figure out how we fold into the discussion is really about the vertical infrastructure, the ground plane. How do we really help create a community with connected sidewalks and bike lanes and that transit priority that is competitive, so that people choose these alternatives rather than hopping in a car. So it's not just about adding people and density to station areas, but it's also tapping into and making sure that there's physical connection to the folks that already live in the community around our transit. So going to our next slide. Just, kind of a reminder, I think like TOD is not new in the Portland region. We've been trying to do this for a very long time. I've got a long history of really amazing planning in Oregon that we can lean on. Really strong muscle of our 2040 growth plan. It's been a long journey to get where we are today, and so I can't say that Guy and I are like starting TOD or the beginning of TOD at TriMet. Really, we're just trying to kind of formalize our program, formalize our system, and really try to get more projects in the work in the pipeline. So yeah, just kind of picking through and helping visualize, what does TOD look like? I think we have so many great examples here in our own backyard in Portland. Some that TriMet has participated on, some that our agency partners and consultants and community members have all been really instrumental in shaping. David and his colleagues out in Hillsborough gave us our TOD program gave us an amazing tour earlier this year to really kind of walk through examples that are already built that we can look to and keep learning from as we go. And I think Arenco, this is, I want to say, a national gold star precedent for TOD. And it was done quite a while ago. We have, Goose Hollow. I always think about the stadium and the development. If anyone's been down in Goose Hollow recently, there are so many like 12 to 17 story developments in the works right now. We've got our colleagues out in Gresham are doing some amazing things in Rockwood. We've got the Arenco station, Oliver station in Lentz. The example projects are kind of endless. But it's the transit that kind of glues all these things together. So kind of stepping back, why is TriMet pulling together this regional TOD plan? What was kind of the history, the impetus of it? And then we'll get into kind of the core of it and the content. So yeah, I would say really it was kind of 2020 that the agency got pretty serious about formalizing our program. At that point, we had created a set of guidelines. It's about a 4-page document. It's available on our TOD TriMet website. And it really just helped kind of lay out the groundwork. What are our goals? How is, the agents, what is the agency's role in this work? What does TriMet have to offer in terms of this process? So it's really the TOD guidelines were kind of the starting point, and really this plan helps kind of expand that entire conversation. It gives transparency to our program and our process. Guy and I fetch emails on a weekly basis with inquiries about our real property, our community engagement process, what future transit investments look like. And so really the plan is to help kind of guide what the agency is thinking, like what our work plan is for the time in front of us and how we're going to help get more TOD throughout the agency. It outlines our engagement guidelines. I think we really want to make sure that we're being incredibly sensitive and contextual to the station areas and the TODs that we're working on. So we've got a big section in there about kind of what our expectation is if we're working with a developer, what we expect of you in terms of understanding what community benefits might be folded into a project, how to interact with a community, just really trying to provide some guidance there. There is a big site inventory, evaluation, and prioritization framework. Really trying to lay out, what are the opportunities? We often point people to our park and ride map as kind of like, well, this is the majority of a lot of the real estate that we own. And how are we thinking about things from like a prioritization perspective? You guys can walk us through kind of our implementation framework and toolkit. And yeah, just trying to kind of pull all the layers together. So just kind of a little bit more context on this plan. As I mentioned, in 2020, we had this 4-page TOD guidelines that our board approved. They're really simple, but we really wanted to expand on that, put more content in this, kind of help share what we're doing. And so we applied for a ODOT TGM grant, Transportation Growth Management grant, and we were successful. So we owe a huge thanks to ODOT for really facilitating this work. They gave us about $240,000 in grant money. And then we spent the next 2 years really onboarding our consultant team and doing community engagement, putting together like a stakeholder work group to really understand, what is this document going to say? How are we going to develop this? And just making sure that the right approach was folded into this. And so today, we're just trying to really spread the word. We're launching this plan. It is a living document, I should say. So it's not set in stone. I think we're a part of our strategy as a program is to be really nimble, to be able to respond to opportunities that come up, inquiries, new ballot measures that get passed to funnel, money towards civic investments. I think we really want to chase opportunities where the market allows us to. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Guy, who's going to kind of open the plan up. And I did want to point out, I did share the link in the chat. If you're able to download it, I think it will help kind of contextualize our presentation today as Guy walks through the various chapters and just kind of how to use it and familiarize everyone with it. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Fiona, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. So normally it's me kicking off and then I hand it over to Fiona. We turn it on its head today. And I have to say, it's super hard to stay quiet because firstly, I love to talk. Secondly, we're really excited by the plan. It's, this has been sort of 2 years of hard work, but beyond that, I think the agency has been looking in this direction for a long time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just give you a snapshot of each of the chapters and how the plan is structured. Build a little bit on the purpose, this transparency, continuity, My background is in, commercial brokerage and development, and trying to bring certainty for parties, and to have the opportunity to speak to a group of planners and designers and other professionals. We hope that this helps you if you're conceptualizing with clients or for your own personal basis, what could happen at a TOD site. So the plan itself is broken up into 5. We tried to make it manageable because it's a complicated area. It can get pretty involved and complex, but we've broken it up into 5 distinct elements. They're listed in front of you, but really what we've been trying to sort of answer the why, what, where, who, and how in each element. And what I'll do is we're just going to take a snapshot from each chapter. So go to the next slide, please. So the why, we've touched on it. Fiona sort of mentioned it in setting the scene and the contextual. Why was TriMet interested in TOD? Why should we be sort of supporting it? Why should we be promoting it? And this ties into our TOD guidelines. We've got 7 goals. We're trying to operate a dynamic program that can also respond to changing needs and changing conditions and environments. So, these are, we are a transit agency first and foremost. And so we're looking to support transit, and efficient land use around station is part of that goal. So integrated and multimodal is a key element to the plan. Historically, I think transit agency have just thought about a project connecting A to B and not really thinking about how do you connect the project to the community. And we owe a debt, I think. He's now retired and playing golf, but Bob Hastings, who many of you know, was very much a thought leader in saying transit projects aren't just transit projects, they're community projects. And we subscribe to that philosophy. For anything to be successful, it's got to be easy to use, and people have got to want to use it. So we want to make TOD user friendly. We're also fiscal guardians of assets, be that land, be it transit assets. So we want to make sure that whatever our TOD does, it makes sense from a financial perspective. So that means we're not necessarily pursuing every last dollar, because we can trade land value for ridership, if that makes sense, or other community benefits. But at the same time, we're not simply going to, give away valuable assets to somebody that's going to do a subpar or below density or below optimal project. So it's a trade. Safety is obviously a huge conversation at the moment, and it's core to basically having a usable and attractive transit system and viable communities. So that's a big element, and we believe in activation that brings safety. Balance and mix of uses. We are all, the housing crisis is extreme. The need for affordable housing is even more extreme. But we believe healthy communities have a mix of uses and a mix of incomes within them. So we're always looking at those elements. Density is very important, but it has to, as Fiona said, it has to be contextual to the neighborhood. And we've seen not in Portland and elsewhere, we've seen projects where big dreams, high density have been envisioned, but ultimately they've perhaps been too ambitious. And so they've stalled, and then that has ultimately resulted in urban, basically a lack of urban development, which has had the opposite effect to those original visions. And then finally, provide housing. I think as we go forward, housing is absolutely an essential element to the program. But I also think that we're increasingly thinking about workforce and employment as well. And perhaps, that's number 8 that falls onto our list. Next slide. The second chapter within the plan itself starts talking about, what is the plan and how does it fit into the existing framework? Now, TriMet itself, there are several things that we are a transit agency, but we have no power over land use or planning decisions. And also we develop transit projects, but we're not a developer of commercial or residential properties. And so, what we've tried to do is in this chapter is go into a little bit more detail about what the plan is, what elements it contains, and also where does it fit within the hierarchy of local plans. And so this graphic, for example, shows you where the transit and how it works with those plans, so it can be seen in context. So, as I said, we don't have land use or zoning authorities. So basically, we sit below the regional and sub-regional and city jurisdictional plans. But we're trying to guide, within that framework, what is appropriate at our station areas across the region. We also, we're constantly looking at opportunities that exist to conduct studies, both, this is a regional level plan, but at the sub-regional level along a corridor, for instance, when a new transit project is proposed or an existing transit project is going to be modified or needs attention, and also at an individual site-specific location. So you can see how it fits in, and we presented previously to the AIA and UDP panel about the Better Red Station area planning work, and that is one of those sort of sub-regional focuses. We secured grant money from the FTA tied to the Better Red Improvement Project, and we looked at the Gateway and Park Road station areas on the east side, and then we looked at Willow Creek and some stations in Beaverton on the west side as to how do we promote TOD there. If we look at individual site studies, we've then taken that a little bit further with the Hollywood Transit Center, which is now progressing through pre-development and other areas where basically we've identified a TOD, we're going to move it forward, and then we need to basically look at what is, within the sort of the bigger framework, what exactly, based on the conditions at each location, can be delivered. So on the chapter 3 is looking at where, and it takes our portfolio of sites, and this is a graphic that shows our prioritization framework. It takes TriMet's portfolio of TOD sites, and it explains how we prioritize those into high, medium, and low priority sites. And we've created a 3-step process, effectively 3 or 4-step process, where initially it's a purely database. Firstly, it's the inventory, step 1. Step 2 is a database screening using quantitative and qualitative metrics. And that is designed so that we can repeat that periodically over time to reassess as conditions change. Step 3 is then a more dynamic screenings process that takes individual stakeholder needs, including TriMet, including the community, and it also looks at where have we recently done TOD work, so that we're not biased to a particular location that has, that meets all the data metrics, so that we end up planning all our TODs in around Inner Portland, for instance, or East Portland. We can then say, well, we've actually done some station area planning work, or we've delivered projects in East Portland. We need to look at North Portland, or we need to look, in the Southwest Corridor out in Hillsborough, for instance. So that's that opportunity index. This dynamic screening process hopefully allows us to be nimble when we are selecting and prioritizing sites, because as we all know, conditions change, pandemics, no one was anticipating that, and that's changed how people work, and that then therefore changed potentially which TOD sites are highest priority for the agency. But at the same time, it needs to be transparent, which is how, this is part of this process where, where you can see the steps, and then we can, justify and explain to stakeholders why something was perhaps previously a medium priority site is then prioritized to a high priority site, or deprioritized to a low priority site. Next slide, please. So chapter 4 is basically taking those prioritizations, and then it's explaining, right, so we've got priority sites, and then we're going to run a selection process, and really it's about how does TriMet make decisions, and having come from the development space, we think it's very important to make sure that it's transparent in terms of the processes and the need. And so this chapter, this is a graphic that outlines our solicited proposal process. So when TriMet is going to run an RFP and an RFQ for a site, for instance, what the steps it takes to run through it. But we also have a similar graphic that runs what the process is if people make an unsolicited proposal to TriMet. And so you can see, hopefully, again, this transparency element that shows the decision pathways and how TriMet ultimately elects to select sites. And like all organizations, we have, a limited amount of resources and bandwidth and, funding we don't have any funding within the program, but, the levers that we can pull. And we want to make sure that those are used in the most efficient way and to the maximum impact. And chapter 5. So the final part is sort of the implementation. It's like, we've prioritized sites, we've selected partners, and then how do we go about supporting those partners, and what can TriMet do to deliver, TOD? And this is, we do take, even if we're doing a land sale to a partner because it's surplus property that TriMet has no long-term interest in owning, we still see it as a partnership, because ultimately we are always going to have infrastructure adjacent to the site or within close proximity to the site. So although we're prescriptive, we want to be clear about what we want so that people understand. And we also want to, in that partnership role, do what we can to support our partners in their delivery, because we know development is difficult, it's complex, it takes time. So what are the levers that we can use? And so this chapter, it explains the public engagement and outreach practices that we use and that we encourage. And in that is transparency to stakeholders so that they know where they can engage with TriMet, whether it's on site prioritization or on the specifics for design of a particular TOD. We also outline what are the transaction structures and approaches that TriMet will consider and is open to. And ultimately, we will consider pretty much everything. We want to be creative and innovative in terms of delivering TOD, because we know it's not easy. We also outline funding and financing strategies that are available. And our team, we have influence and connections, at federal and state level that we look to try and leverage to try and bring funding to support projects. Often, whether it's workforce housing or affordable housing, we know there's significant subsidy needed, and we know that infrastructure is very expensive. We've got a lot of insight into that. And so we're going to constantly work with partners to see where we can, bring that influence to bear to support projects, whether that's finding grant funding, whether that's using federal loan programs, et cetera, so on and so forth. And the final part is mobility strategies. Part of that connectivity, really what makes a successful TOD is something that is permeable and something that, people can access from transit, and whether that's 1 block away or 5 blocks away, that mobility and connectivity is vital. I would say that chapter 5 is also particularly relevant to third-party owners that own real estate that's not, that's adjacent to TriMet property or infrastructure, and hopefully it's a resource that those groups can use, who can say, oh well, actually maybe TriMet can help with this, or how can perhaps we can partner with them, perhaps we can do a site assemblage and do a bigger project, and now I understand what they're looking for. Next slide. And I'm looking at the clock as well so that we've got time for questions. Ultimately, what's the plan for, really, the nuts and bolts of it is the whole purpose here is to deliver more community focused TOD projects. Fiona mentioned it at the start, there's a good history in the Portland region for TOD, going back all the way to streetcar suburbs and before. And And there have been some great projects in recent years, and some of which some of you here I think have been involved in some of these. You know, on the right-hand side, there are 2 projects in pipeline: the Hollywood Hub and the East County Library projects. We're super excited by those. Those are big projects. You know, I think, you know, they will be hopefully, you know, high watermarks for what can be done. You know, set new precedents and push boundaries. And then on the left-hand side, you know, these are 4 projects. All of these are open. 2 market rate for Dean River and Sawback Apartments. Sawback's Goose Hollow. Dean River is in Brooklyn. Yeah, that's Dean River has 72 units, no parking spaces. Sawback has 182. There's got an inclusionary housing element to it, limited parking. And then on the top 2 on the left-hand side, Renaissance Commons up in Kenton, North Portland, you know, is 189 units by Reach CDC, and, you know, designed to even now stands out to this day. And Fuller Station, which is our most recently open project, that's in Clackamas County at Fuller Road Max, 100 units, 60 surface parking spaces. The project soft opened in November. As of the beginning of March, it was fully leased. What the really, I think, you know, and to try and give you some concept about our mindset here, this is a great project. Although it looks pretty plain vanilla as a, you know, affordable housing building goes, there are a couple of things that really set it apart. Is it delivered a new road on the south side of the site that basically unlocks a county-owned parcel and several other private-owned parcels that are slated for residential development. So that can create a center of mass of new residential housing. And yes, it has 60 surface parking spaces. We're realists. We recognize parking is required, but we do think that over time, there is potential for densification on that site. And then there remains another 2/3 to the original park and ride, which could in future years support further development. So next slide, please. So just to wrap up, acknowledgements, Fiona mentioned this, ODOT and DCLD as well, because they're partners in the TGM program, were invaluable and really sort of, when we pitched the original idea to them, got it, and we are super grateful for their grant support. We didn't conduct this in a vacuum either, and so we had a lot of input from a project stakeholder advisory group, and you can see their names listed here. Yeah, we wanted to know when we were selecting data metrics, what data metrics should we use, what's replicable, yeah, what's important, how do we conduct stakeholder engagement, what should we tweak? So we've taken that input, and it is a dynamic plan. We expect the plan to evolve over time because we're always learning, and, you know, best practices are always being revised. We had participation from TriMet's CAT, Committee on Accessible Transportation, and Transit Equity and Advisory Committees. Jurisdictional partners, again, lots of conversations with cities and with Metro to how does this fit within their planning framework. Our consultant team of MIG and Echo Northwest in particular, who were, you know, both of whom were really instrumental, did a lot of hard work in putting this all down on paper. And then finally, within TriMet ourselves, you know, we are just a very small part of a big agency, and we rely on our input from operations, from maintenance of way, from facilities maintenance, so to understand how do we tick and operate as a team. So that's it. We appreciate you coming here today, and as we said at the start, we'll jump into questions. But if there's anything in particular or particular site, you know, please contact Fiona or myself at any point. Whether it's about the plan or about individual projects, because, you know, we want it's a two-way conversation, and we are very much open for business.
And before we break for questions, I just wanted to use this as a plug. We just posted a bunch of internship opportunities on our website. Here's the link for it. Lots of different departments, lots of different areas of TriMet that you can get a feel for. So please share the word that we've got that open right now. And yeah, we can open it up to questions, comments. I can leave the slides up. We can go back to things. I think Erin's gonna MC us, but yeah.
Feel free to post questions in the chat window, or go ahead and raise your hand in Zoom and we'll call on you and let you ask questions or make comments or tell inspiring stories, any and all of the above.
We could do an icebreaker. What's your favorite TOD?
You guys must have just like covered everything so thoroughly.
No, I don't know about that.
Everything so well. Everyone's just stunned into silence at this point.
I realized I said vertical development earlier, not horizontal. Pardon my misspeaking. Maybe, I mean, while folks are coming up with questions, I think, Guy and I can elaborate on some areas. I think we use the word catalytic a lot. And I think we look at a lot of station areas where we put a transit in like decades ago, and there's still just like no density around the station. And so it's like, I think in that framework, we can see a little bit of TriMet investment, like a little bit of trying to put an RFP out, really marketing an opportunity can sort of like create this initial project that then, kind of has mushrooms around it and grow up. And it really helps kind of catalyze that initial investment. I think we often see, not to reference Bob Hastings again, but he had this quote of 1 + 1 = 3. And it's like, the more you can kind of come to the table and people have the same goal and somebody puts in their dollar first, like it really does help leverage more investment. So we're just trying to always operate under that understanding of like, let's just kind of get things moving with development.
I mean, our goal in certainly our current projects is really to highlight, I think people, we're all guilty of this to some extent, is plans great and absolutely essential, but when it comes to sort of delivering projects, the proof, with the program, we're trying to basically increase the cadence of delivery so that people can see what can be done, and we're never quite sure what's around the corner. But we just think that as Hollywood and Gresham and the East County Library come on board, people can get inspired and go, well, actually, you know what, I can do this. And we do want to think big, but at the same time, we have to deliver. So and I think there's some questions coming through.
Yeah, we've got a couple now. So one is TriMet partnered with any internal or external organizations to address concerns about displacement due to gentrification in areas that are slated for new development? An excellent question. Yes.
The answer is yes, we are. And I think on all the projects that we now conduct, there is we try and put together an equitable development committee. We recognize that transit investment can cause displacement and gentrification. So before the project gets too far in advance, what we're trying to do, and the FTA is looking at the rules at the moment to allow sort of advanced purchase of land, but we at least identify the opportunities where if a project's going to cause displacement because it's going to result in housing being eliminated, how's that housing replaced? And this was conducted in the Southwest Corridor with an MOU between the project partners to deliver affordable housing that was going to be lost as a result of the project. We've been working recently with Metro and with the City of Portland, and there's some conversations going on in Salem about this to try and land bank some opportunities on 82nd, because if that project advances, what are the potentials for displacement there? So we do think about it, and we look at all of the purpose. We have an equity lens within both within the quantitative and the qualitative assessment of sites, but also in that dynamic screening, so that if a TOD project is going to cause some displacement, we have to balance it. We obviously don't want any displacement, but we've got to look at it carefully and work out, can we prioritize this site if it's going to cause displacement?
Great. A couple of semi-related questions here. What areas and projects are you most excited about in the near future stemming from this plan? And then what TOD projects are coming up that the UDP group may find most interesting?
Yeah. I mean, I think Guy cited a few of them in one of our slides. Hollywood is a big one. It just went to the design commission 2 weeks ago, got a really positive review from the commissioners. We're very excited about this new East County Library in Gresham. It's a huge civic investment. We're retaining a portion of the 3-acre parcel that we own for a future TOD development. The city's already got amazing zoning out there. It's about up to 10 stories. There's a lot of other investments. Metro's got a few sites out there that they're working on developing, that Aaron's presented on previously. There's just a lot happening. So it's kind of like following those catalytic events that we mentioned. Yeah, I'd love to share more about the library as that project evolves. I mean, really, that's county led. TriMet is, for that one, selling a portion of their park and ride for that use. But yeah, I think we're generally trying to really make sure that civic opportunities in particular, I think because they are so inclusive and because they can really be a community anchor, we would love to keep co-locating those at our transit as much as possible. So Guy and I are definitely following, what upcoming investments are there in the region? What bond measures are there? What new libraries or facilities are in the pipeline? And just making sure kind of before they're, already kind of sketched out on paper that we're able to kind of jump in the conversation and make sure that our available sites are considered.
Yeah, I would add that sort of geographically, we secured an FTA grant to do station area planning work at 122nd and Burnside, the Menlo Park and Ride, and 181st and Burnside, that Park and Ride in Rockwood. And personally, I'm very interested to look at, to try and see whether there's a new corridor along Burnside that I think there's an opportunity there as people's lifestyles have changed and there's less commuting into sort of downtown. Can this be a new east-west corridor? It already exists. It needs those sort of centers, to exist around it. And I think there's a need for investment into that part of the city. On the west side, I think no secrets, and we've been having some conversations with David McInerney about this. But Willow Creek is high on our list of priorities for future opportunities.
Sort of logistical question here about where to go to look for RFP announcements from TriMet.
Yes,
yeah,
that's
I
a
saw
great
that.
question. We would love to develop, and we've talked to our Metro TOD colleagues before. I know that they have some listservs that they've kind of cultivated and curated. And so we'll definitely be trying to kind of formalize that process so that we can either send quarterly updates or kind of as they're ready RFP announcements. We do have a website. We do post everything there. We also often post things in the DJC, the Daily Journal of Commerce. I think definitely let us know if you are a person of interest, and we'll make sure we get your email and try to spread the word as much as possible. But yeah, we'll be formalizing that in the near future.
Yeah, I think our website, which is sort of next on the hit list of things for substantial sort of focus, we will be looking to evolve that in a way where you can sign up and then there's a way channel for receive RFP documents, notices, etc.
And I would also just add, Guy and I go to our TriMet board of directors meeting on generally about a quarterly basis, just to give updates, share what we're doing, really try to provide that transparency. So that's another good way to follow along.
Right. And following on the description that you all were talking about earlier about, helping to catalyze different areas, we have a question here about, have you found that your study of TriMet held sites has started to catalyze interest from adjacent private property owners, thinking specifically of Gateway, but curious if this is happening throughout the sub areas?
We have. It's still, I think the planning element is really the newest part to the TOD program at TriMet. Before I joined in 2020, and this sort of the historic, it was a little less, it was more of a sort of surplus property disposition. There wasn't a lot of sort of long-term planning around TriMet sites. And we've had some encouraging conversations with Pack Trust, who own the Gateway Shopping Centre. I think at the same time we've been we're just kicking off this planning on the East Side Park and Rides, and we've had some interesting conversations with Gresham about opportunities there as well. So it is beginning to filter through. It's a little case by case basis, and some sites have hard boundaries where things are not changing, but the goal is to have that interaction, because transit doesn't just stop at our land boundaries. It goes beyond that, as we all know.
Great, and we have one more question. Is there a timeline for completing the assessment and screening of existing real property held by TriMet?
Great question, Ellen, and thank you. Yes, there is. I mean, we've completed it recently, but what we're also aware of is that our portfolio is constantly changing, as are our needs, as projects evolve and conditions change. So the way that the screening process and the prioritization process was developed is that, using GIS data, the model can be rerun periodically. So, for example, if we get funding to do a major transit project, such as like the Southwest Corridor, that results in a large amount of land acquisition by the agency, we can rerun the process so that we can then work out, which are the highest priority sites. Are they the same as they were 2 years ago, or has it changed? And candidly, we should do that on a regular basis anyhow, as circumstances change across the region. What I think we're still working on is how do we, bring that transparency element, is how do we broadcast which are where we're focusing our work, because it does constantly change. There's really 3 of us, 2.5 arguably, with Miles is committed to doing space planning work as well within the agency. So we don't have a lot of resources, and we've got multiple projects that are ongoing planning and development at the moment. So we're a little thin in terms of on the ground. I like to think of it as nimble and dynamic, but so that's the challenge that we've got. But we haven't, that's not lost on us, and we're going to continue as part of this plan refinement. Is how do we continue to sort of broadcast, and I think that will probably be through our website as well. We do list current projects and planned projects and past projects on the website, and then we need to refine that section so it's a little bit more transparent.
Great. I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat, and I haven't seen any hands raised so far this afternoon. Any final questions for our awesome presenters today?
Well, if nobody else is going to have a really burning questions at the moment, I'm Brian Campbell, a member of the executive committee, and I am a active participant in much of the work that the Oregon APA has been doing around the climate friendly and equitable communities initiatives at the state level. And I was curious if to what degree you guys are aware of that effort and how you might see yourselves being prominent actors in making sure we get these areas designated and then developed in an appropriate way.
Great question, Ben. Yeah, that is, I mean, in my opinion, probably one of the most catalytic and transformative things that's happened to the TOD conversation in the last decade is the changed conversation on parking requirements. So we are very, very closely following that. I know it's already in effect, and I think there's, we're, as Guy mentioned, we're realists, and we know that just because you remove that minimum threshold doesn't mean that, parking auto dependency disappears. And so we're trying to be really creative. How can we really stretch parking that is provided in developments to be not just for a resident or not just for a library, but really try to be occupied 24 hours around the clock, and really think about things beyond our site and getting into these district parking conversations. So we're really, we're trying to, this is happening out in Gresham, it's happening on the west side, like really trying to bring our partner agencies to the table to say, like, how do we collectively think through this? How do we leverage incoming developments? What is the model for just smartly thinking about how we're providing parking? And I think one of the things that Guy and I have been thinking about too is, we talked to a lot of other transit agencies across the US. We got to go to the Revolution conference last year that I highly recommend if anyone has never been. But there's a lot of great research on TDM strategies, transportation, demand management. And so we're trying to think about, as the conversation and landscape on parking evolves. So thank you, Jim. Revolution is now impact. But trying to think about how we also can plug that into our development agreements. So like thinking, previously somebody would be providing 200 parking spaces, but now like the conversation is, all right, they're going to provide 80 and they're going to give bus passes to all the residents for 3 years. Like, what is the kind of like shifting the collateral and shifting the way that people are thinking about things? Or is it investment in a new street? Kind of just thinking broadly.
Yeah, I think Brian, Fiona's nailed it. I think the one thing I'd add is, we have parking assets. Often they're underused. So, I think occasionally there's scope for leveraging those, particularly structured parking assets. I think part of this conversation about partnerships is working the CFAC regulations, big impact on cities and parking strategies. And so, we're increasingly open to having conversations with cities to find, holistic solutions. So that's, it's parking is a big thing, as a general sort of position. I think the TOD group, we're like, listen, you have a car, you pay for it. So that means you should be paying probably for parking, and if you're developing, and your parking comes with your development, you should be paying for it, rather than, the people without, cars in a development subsidizing the parking that's delivered within it. So, it's, but it's a very complicated and emotive subject, as we all know. So, not going to solve it in a day, but I think we're going to have to try some things that make us feel uncomfortable. If they don't work, then we'll have to find a solution. But if we don't try, we're not going to address it.
Great. I'm not seeing any additional questions or hands raised. And we're closing in on 1 o'clock. So I think at this point, I'd like to thank Fiona and Guy for sharing all of this great work that you've been doing on the TriMet TOD plan, and thank everybody for participating today and joining us. Great to see so many folks on the call. Fiona, have we locked in our topic for May yet? I know we've been brainstorming a few really exciting options.
Our partners from Bora are going to come share about their Young Black, I'm blanking on the acronym, Young Black
Housing, YBH.
Housing Workforce Effort. So we will have that posted soon. Yeah, that is lined up. We'll get that link posted on our website.
Great. Yeah, so expect that coming up on May 16th, 12 to 1, also on Zoom, and we'd love to see you all here then. So thank you all very much.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining.
See you.